Hey guys, quick video for you today with the youth season right around the corner here in Michigan. This year the youth hunt falls on September 13th and 14th. So hopefully you have time to watch this video before the youth hunt, but if not, a lot of these strategies can be tied in with our early season strategies, but I did want to make a video specific to the youth hunt. Whenever we're hunting, we want to base our strategies on what the deer are doing at that time of the year. And as I just mentioned, the youth hunt is in the middle of September, and most years in the middle of September, the deer or the bucks that most likely you'll be targeting are still on that bed to feed pattern. They're spending most of the day bedded down, and they're getting up sometime in the late afternoon, early evening to head towards that afternoon food source or that destination food source. Also, most years in mid-September, normally bucks are still hanging around in their bachelor groups. They're still tolerating each other and moving together as one bachelor group. So a lot of years you'll see multiple bucks together during the youth hunt. And knowing what the deer or the bucks are doing this time of year is going to lead us right into our first tip. And that's to focus more on afternoon hunts and less on morning hunts. Now, I understand the youth hunt is only 2 days. It's only the 13th and the 14th. So if you have to hunt the morning, hunt the morning. But if you have the opportunity or you're flexible to where you can hunt either the morning or the afternoon, I would place a priority on those afternoon sits and less of a priority on those morning hunts. And that's because around this time of the year, bucks tend to get back to their beds earlier in the morning, around the same time that we're walking to our stands. And our trail cameras right now are showing us that. Early in the morning, these bucks are passing through our staging food plots, and we kind of see them heading back towards those bedding locations. And if you're walking into the woods towards those stands, you just have a higher probability of bumping those deer as opposed to getting an opportunity. And if you do happen to spook that buck in the morning, you're going to lower your chances for that afternoon hunt where you had a higher probability of having an opportunity anyways. And that's going to lead us right into our second tip for increasing our chances during the youth hunt. Because we're placing more of a priority on those afternoons, this means that we want to be focusing on those afternoon food sources, whatever the deer are targeting on your property in mid-September. Now, there's a few food sources that I would be looking for on your property depending on what your property is offering. And these are going to be in no particular order for level of importance, but one would be a green food source or a food plot. If you have a clover field on your property or clover chicory or maybe a hay field on your property or next door, that would be something that I would be looking at or focusing on during the youth hunt, because these deer are going to be leaving those bedding areas in the late afternoon, early evening to hit those food sources. Another food source I'd be focusing on during the youth hunt would be soybeans. Depending on when those beans were planted, if they're still green, that is going to be a magnet for deer during the youth hunt. Now, if they're starting to yellow, they're going to start losing interest and they're going to shift their focus to those food plots or maybe the third food source that we should be targeting. And the third food source that we'll talk about in this video that I'd be focusing on during the youth hunt, if you have it on your property, are white oaks. If you have white oaks on your property and they are producing this year, that is a great place to sit during the youth hunt. Again, those bucks are going to leave their beds in the late afternoon, early evening and head to their afternoon food source. And there's not much that they prefer more than a bunch of white oak acorns on the ground. So if you can, during the youth hunt, try to focus on those afternoon hunts over a food source, whether that's a clover plot, clover chicory, a hay field, soybeans, or white oak acorns. You want to try to find the preferred food source on your property, so when those deer leave the bed, you're there waiting. The next tip for hunting during the youth season is one that I try to mention anytime we talk about hunting with kids, and that's try to find a very comfortable stand location or blind. And that's because we're going to be sitting out there for a while. I mentioned earlier that these bucks, they're going to be sitting in their beds for quite a while and they're not going to get up, especially with how warm it's going to be this weekend, until the late afternoon, early evening. So you might not see these deer until right before last light. So you'll be sitting in that blind or that stand for a while. We want to make sure that we are comfortable in the blind. Once you start getting uncomfortable, that's when you start wiggling around, start moving a lot more. And for those of you that have hunted with kids, they can't sit nearly as long as an adult. And we want to make sure that they can last in the stand and sit still for as long as possible. And that starts with a comfortable stand location. Another thing to remember when trying to ensure that they're comfortable in the stand or in the blind is just to try to bring enough snacks or drinks with you while you're hunting. Again, any of you that have hunted with kids before know, man, they go through snacks like crazy. I remember the first time I went out, I didn't bring enough snacks, but the second time, I thought I did. I had my whole backpack filled with snacks. And by the time the hunt was over, we went through all of them. So even if you think you have enough snacks in your backpack, bring more. And the last tip I have for you guys for hunting during the youth season is an easy one, but it's also the most important one. And that's just to remember to have fun. Hunting can get pretty serious for us as adults with how much time and money we put into this, with the scouting, playing the wind, studying the patterns, food plots, chasing that target buck. But for kids, most of them don't really understand a lot of that yet. And to them, the magic isn't really in the size of the buck, the inches in the antler. To them, they're just having fun being out in the woods with their dad. And if you guys do have success this weekend, I'm sure they'll be ecstatic. But a lot of kids, they don't measure success by that filled tag. The things that they're gonna remember are those snacks in the blind, whispering about the sounds they hear or what they think they see in the woods. So even though we take this very seriously, I do too, try your best to remember to have fun. And that doesn't mean that we're not gonna try to harvest a deer or we're not gonna try to teach our kids why we're doing what we're doing. We can still talk about why we're hunting over the oak trees, why the deer like acorns, or why we have to walk quietly when getting to and from our stands. We can still have success and we can still teach our kids about the outdoors and about hunting while having fun at the same time. Just try your best to remember why you got into hunting in the first place. I bet you, for most of you, and I know it was for me, I just like being outside with my dad. I enjoyed seeing deer too, but for the most part, I just like being in the woods with my dad. That was the most enjoyable part of hunting, and that's why, I fell in love with it, initially. So just try to remember that, why you fell in love with hunting in the first place, and just try to pass that down to the next generation. I hope you guys that are going out have a great weekend, a safe weekend, good luck. And if you guys do have any questions on the youth season or any part of the season, please drop those questions in the comment section below, and we'll see you in the next video.